You have any Madam Chair?
Can I get a motion that we now return to regular session?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we return to regular session. All those in favor of the roll call vote?
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Conway?
Aye.
Mr. Ms. Bishop?
Staff requests approval of certification of the closed meeting, resolution 21-16.
Move to approve resolution 21-16. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve resolution 21-16. All those in favor of the roll call vote?
Mr. Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Conway?
Aye.
Mr. King? Ms. Bishop?
Aye.
Staff is also requesting approval of the agenda with two added items. The first being the school cost sharing agreement, and the second, the selection of an evaluation board.
I move to approve the agenda as amended. Second.
It's been moved and second that we approve, agenda as amended. All those in favor of the roll call vote?
Mr. Brown. Mr. Conway. Mr. Kenny. Ms. Bishop.
Aye.
Staff is also requesting approval of the consent agenda. It consists of the minutes of the special meeting of July 21st, budgetary matters, warrants, and the warrant amount has increased by $22,477.23, and also resolution 21-19, personnel matters resulting from closed session.
I move we approve the consent agenda. Second.
It's been moved and second that we approve consent agenda as amended. All those in favor of the roll call vote?
Mr. Brown. Mr. Conway. Mr. Kenny. Ms. Bishop.
Aye.
The next item on this evening's agenda is a public hearing. The public hearing is in regards to the removal of the war memorials that are present on Courthouse Square. This public hearing has been duly advertised as required by State Code 15.2-1812 and amended on July 1, 2020, that permits a locality to remove, relocate, cover, or contextualize any such monument.
I move we go into a public hearing. Second.
It's been moved and second that we go into public hearing on removal of war memorials. All those in favor of the roll call vote?
Mr. Brown. Mr. Conway. Mr. Kenny. Ms. Bishop.
Any citizens or residents that wish to speak at this time in regards to the removal of war memorial should come to the podium, state your name and address. What do you want to hold it? Okay. Yes, we have a resolution prior to the start. If you can, this way, if you can give us just a minute so that you will know what the resolution consists of before you speak. Okay?
This won't take long. The board has three options. One is they can do nothing. They're not required to act this evening. They choose not to. Another is they can decide against relocating the monument from Florida. Those don't require much advanced planning. The third option is if they choose to remove, recommend remove or act to remove the monument from the courthouse. And to do that, the staff has prepared a resolution. So this is a resolution that would be considered by the board, and I'm going to read it so the public will know. The resolution reads, whereas in compliance with Virginia Code Section 15.2-1812B, on August 3, 2020, the Greensville County Board of Supervisors conducted a duly advertised public hearing regarding the possible removal of a Confederate monument now located on Courthouse Square. Whereas, after considering comments made at the public hearing, the board has decided to remove the monument from Courthouse Square. Whereas, Virginia Code Section 15.2-1812B requires that before such removal is effected, certain entities must be afforded an opportunity to take possession of the monument. It is therefore resolved by the Board of Supervisors as follows. Number one, the monument now located on Courthouse Square will be removed. Number two, until September 4, 2020, any entity designated in Virginia Code 15.2-1812B shall have the right to request possession of the monument. Number three, the entities designated in that code section are any museum, historical society, government, or military battlefield. Number four, if none of the designated entities request possession of the monument at its meeting on September 8, 2020, or at any subsequent meeting, the board may determine where the monument will be relocated after its removal from Courthouse Square. Number five, and finally, as authorized by that same code section, the board of the county will bear the cost of removing and relocating the monument. In reviewing this resolution, I don't need to telegraph what the board's going to do. This is one of their three options, and they had to have them spelled out clearly so the public understood what they may do. The other thing I've been asked to do is review for the public the board's public hearing protocol. So I'll go over that so there won't be any misunderstanding. This has been previously adopted by the board. Each speaker this evening will be given 3 minutes to address the Board of Supervisors. The time limit will be strictly enforced. Each speaker will be advised by me when 2 minutes have elapsed, so you'll know when you have 1 minute left to wrap it up. Each speaker will be advised when the entire 3 minutes has elapsed. The speakers are asked to address the Board of Supervisors only, not to turn and engage with other people in the audience. Please direct your comments to the board only. The board has set this aside to hear from interested parties. Each person here will have 3 minutes to speak. No person here will have the right to transfer his or her 3 minutes to a speaker. So each person here has a total of 3 minutes only to address the board. And as always, we ask that we know you will, please remain respectful of the other persons that are present. The final 2 things. Can you hear me? Okay. If you would please, before your comments, state your name and address for the record. And finally, just so you know, for being fair, I've got a stopwatch, so I'll watch carefully if it's been 3 minutes. Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Want to tell me when to go?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Martha Dodd Slippy, and I live at 5454 Driveway Road in Korea. And I have a letter from California. Said, dear Mrs. Dodd Slippy, I understand from reading some of your posts that the only statute in Emporia erected in 1910 by the United Daughters of the Confederacy is being considered for removal the August 3rd board. I plead with the Board of Supervisors, not one more historic statute for demolition, please. Rioters have destroyed most of our history, and now there will be nothing but pictures to look at for the preservation and appreciation. This latest trend on merely doesn't make this particular statute another victim. Groups of rioters have destroyed too much of our American history and pride. This particular monument was an appreciation of the soldiers protecting Virginia. Nothing more, nothing less. It deserves its resting place where it is. And her name is Jane Addams. I recommend PBS, the Civil War. I have 2 videos on the Civil War. And it explains the history of how things came about, how states' rights came about, and without the states' rights, the Civil War would not have resolved the 13th Amendment, which frees slavery. You gotta look at the good part of this. For 246 years, we had slavery on Virginia soil since 1613. And it finally
Ms. Gunn,
freed.
1 minute.
So having a UDC statute given in the honor of those who protected Virginia would be an abomination to remove it. You can't even see it. My husband's been coming here 20 years, never knew we had one. It's hidden by the trees, you know that. So removing it is a cost and not a good cost. Leave it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Slippy.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Richardson. I reside at 935 Crescent Road in Emporia, Virginia. I'm here on a mission, requesting that a statue on the courthouse square honoring the Confederate soldier be removed. The statue does not change history. How can it? The facts are, the North won the Civil War, not the South. Why then are we honoring the loser? A statue does not change the outcome. It does not change history. But the statue does represent a hateful past of slavery and injustice. We are not about erasing history, but we are about correcting it. I don't see any statues honoring Frederick Douglass or Nat Turner, or the division and destruction of Black families who were sold to the highest bidder. Or the pain and degradation of being beaten until your will to stand up was destroyed. No, this is not about changing history. It's about removing a distorted picture that depicts an evil past. The statue does not tell the complete story. To be placed in a courthouse square where people go looking and expecting justice, that is not the image that you would want there. We need to be mindful of racial sensitivity.
1 minute, Ms. Reagan.
Okay. Let's stand together for justice, dignity, respect, and pride. Yes, it's time to honor the truth. Slavery ended over 200 years ago, yet we are still fighting for our freedom. And that stands over us a cloud of injustice. We live in a country where we should be honoring each other. For realization, we have pulled ourselves up from slavery to the White House with hateful feet on our backs. So I say in the words of Moses, let my people go. Yes, let that statue go. Board of Supervisors, I respectfully request that that statue in the courthouse square be moved. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else that would like to make a comment?
Good evening. My name is Terry Miles, 224-8 Great Avenue, Chariton, Virginia. Good evening, distinguished board. I come before you as an employee of Greensville County. My work is a landscape worker. Every other Monday, I do work at the Greensville County Courthouse. And I am profoundly affected by the towering statue of a Confederate soldier who represents and symbolizes the oppression of African descendants. And as an African descendant, I am appalled that this statue still shadows over me as I go about my daily affairs. One of my duties to this county is to create an environment that is serene, that is safe, that all who come onto those grounds to conduct business, whether it be civil, personal, what have you. My job is to create an environment that's inviting to them. And in doing so, I feel a great challenge, a great pressure to perform that duty with all sincerity because of the psychological effects
1 minute.
that this statue has on me. I work with a young man, 30 years of age, And he is just coming into an actualization of this symbol. He's raising a young family. And now the history that he's learned in the Greensville County Public Schools is an actual realization to him now because of this. And it does have an effect on our work product. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for your comments.
Good evening, I'm Jane Boone, 2146 Slagles Lake Road. And I understand that people are conflicted. Mapping the human genome proved that there's no scientific basis for race. Sociologists say there may be 34 races. Others say that there's 7 races. People can't agree on what constitutes race. The world's people are diverse. Our differences are cultural and economic, and we must concentrate our energies on solving the inequalities and conflicts caused by those differences. Civil War hero, General George Thomas was from the Newsoms area of Virginia. There's a road named after him from the Newsoms area over to Franklin. He owned slaves and sent them to his brother in the Deep South during the war. Should we rename the road? Actually, he fought for the North and was called the Rock of Chickamauga. A battle important to the North, he accompanied Sherman in his march across Georgia. He was instrumental in the North's victory. General Hawkins of Texas fled to Mexico because his life was threatened by his fellow Texans. After the war, he became governor of Texas. He believed in liberty for slaves. He did not believe they should have the right to vote. Robert E. Lee, leader of the South, freed his wife's slaves in 1862, 5 years after the death of her father, as his will stipulated. That was about a year before Lincoln freed the slaves in the states that were in rebellion. These battle tactics, however, have been studied for generations now. There were more than 47 generals who fought for the North. There were more than 50 Northern generals who fought for the South. None of us is perfect. We are all broken people. Even Lincoln believed that blacks should be sent back to Africa, though America was home for many of them for about 250 years. 75% of the people in the South did not own slaves, whether through religious beliefs, poverty, simply they had no need for them. I listened one day as an old soldier was interviewed, and he was asked, "Why were you fighting against the slaves?" He said, "I won't fight for them or against them. I was fighting for states' rights." Statues are not to be honored or worshipped, any more than photographs are. They exist to teach lessons from the past, to remind us not to make the same mistakes that our predecessors made. Teach children to understand, not to hate. If a statue reminds someone of something unpleasant, it's a good thing. It raises the level of consciousness. It provides a teaching moment.
Ma'am, thank you for your comment.
My name is Winwood Rowe. I live at 305 Jefferson Street. I moved to Emporia 41 years ago. I've been here more than half my life. I consider myself an Emporian and a Virginian. But I didn't grow up. I spent most of my life in Ohio growing up. When I moved here, people told me about beautiful Monument Avenue in Richmond. I said, who are monuments to? Jefferson Davis, Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson. I was amazed by that. I thought the Civil War was over. And so when we come to this question, I think it is perpetuating something that doesn't need to be perpetuated. I had walked by the grounds there and was surprised that it was for the Confederates in the Civil War. When they talk about states' rights, back then, states' rights meant slavery. When I was young, states' rights meant segregation. The Confederate side lost the war. They should have lost the war. They were on the wrong side. I think this statue, I would request that the statue be removed. I didn't hear anybody say that it was going to be destroyed. Could be placed someplace else, but it shouldn't be on government property. So that is my recommendation. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm keeping comments.
My name is Cheryl Moody and I'm from 935 Low Ground Road. I would like to touch on 3 points: love, an intense feeling of deep affection; romanticizing, that deals with or described in an ideal or unrealistic fashion, makes something seem better or more appealing than it really is; and truth, that which is true or in accordance with fact or reality. With that being said, allow me to tell you a tale. There was a 44-year-old man who enjoyed the death of his first wife. Luckily for him, he was able to find love again. This 44-year-old man, along with the new love of his life, produced 7 children. Within their union of love, but sadly, only 4 made it to adulthood. The lovers remained bonded and inseparable during the course of their lives. What a great love story. This is what romanticizing looks like. Now let me give you the truth. That 44-year-old man was Thomas Jefferson. His new love was Sally Hemings, a 14-year-old enslaved girl. The truth is the truth and the facts are the facts. Sally Hemings' story, no matter the angle, she was a slave. She was a child, a baby. Her body was not her own. She was a concubine. These Confederate statues were erected solely for intimidation purposes as well as to thumb the nose at Reconstruction. Romanticizing what our lives could have been if Reconstruction was not rolled back is the truth we live every day. And every day we're told it happened, get over it, move on. No one from slavery exists. In this present time and day, and that is factual, and that is truthful. There is no one here from slavery. But morals, ethics, and values are passed down from generation to generation. And we have to be the ones to say, what do your morals look like? What are your ethics? And what are your values?
Anyone else that would like to speak?
I'm William Brad, I'm from Sussex County. I lived in Newport for 22 years. I just like to touch a little bit on the monument. On March 28, 1862, my great-great-grandfather, Jesse Bradley, enlisted in the 12th Virginia Infantry at Hicksford. He was killed May the 5th, 1864. The Battle of Spotsylvania Courthouse defending our state of Virginia. I can't find where he was buried. But every time that I see the monument at the courthouse, it makes me feel that he was not forgotten. I just ask you to leave it as it is and where it is. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for your comment.
Good evening, I'm Michael Stevens, I live at 1182 Newsom Lane in Ford. I've done a lot of research on all of my family and tracing their boat all the way back to 1600 and 1500 in some cases. I can't find one there. One of my family members ever owned a slave, and they still fought for the South, and some of them fought for the North. They had them in the regions. But in their case, none of which involved owning a slave or wanting to own a slave. My family worked in the field next to them, if anything, by what I can see, doing my research. So the statue, to me, represents the honorable men that died for the state of Virginia and for the cause in which they believe in, and needs to remain where it is. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for your comments.
Edward Bryant, 1940 Sussex Drive. The statue has been there all of my life. You learn from history, and I hate to see it be moved. Do not want any taxpayer money used to remove. And it should, if it's going to be moved, it should be in a nice place. I just don't comprehend why the statute is so little to people. I mean, when I go to Richmond, I see off the Ashes Monument, that doesn't do anything to me, it doesn't offend me. A statute has got history behind it. And also, I would like to, if you're going to use taxpayers' money to move this statue, how about use it to teach history in our schools? Because most of our young kids don't know the history of Greensville County, or how the statute was, why it was put there. Our country has some dark things, but over the years, we have overcome a lot. I'm not going to say we don't have a lot more to go, but we should save the statue and any other monument that says a couple more monuments in the courthouse square too. You want to move that? The cannon, for instance, that was given to us by the United States Army, and it's due for repainting as soon as the painters can get to it. It's part of history. So keep history alive in Greensville County. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for your comment.
I'm going to be a little more brief here, I hope. I'm in bank on 3235 Bluegrass Road, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes here about anything, but I don't care about the statute, whatever happens to it, as long as it's done respectfully and taken care of. My suggestion, this has been done by several counties, so I understand the Richmond paper. Some boards elected to allow the citizens to make this decision and vote this upcoming election, or whatever election it takes, whatever legal matters it takes to have it done. Let the citizens decide what to be done with this, regardless of which way it comes out. And that would take the burden off of this board, pros and cons on both sides, as far as people say, well, they did this, they did that. We did this, we went to the polls and voted, or we didn't go to the polls and voted, and whatever happens to the statute happens. To me, it's a democratic process in the way it should be happening.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Any others? With there being no more comments, I do want to put on the record that I have received a petition, and it has over 100 signatures of citizens that want the statue removed. And I will turn into the clerk as well. At this time, can I get a motion that we end close, that we end public here and return to regular session?
I move we return to regular session. Second.
Has been moved and seconded that we end public hearing and return to regular session. All those in favor, roll call vote.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Conwell. Mr. Kane. Ms. Bishop.
The next item is action resulting from the public hearing. There is resolution 21-18, which I believe Mr. Slayton read to you prior to the comments from the public. The board's pleasure is to adopt that resolution and review the time.
Before any vote goes forward, I would just like my view to be stated for the record. And I am not about destroying or eliminating any type of history because it happened, we can't change that. But I do feel that the statue should be removed from Courthouse Square and placed at a location where those that want to see it can see it and can appreciate it. I'm not about destroying anything, and that is my personal view.
I'm gonna echo you, and the only thing I would suggest this is, wherever that statue goes, it not ever be in the view of the public. I would not want to see it in the view of the public. We will remove it from public land, be moved to a museum, or to a private section, so anybody that wants to see that statue, it needs to be put somewhere where they can see it. But it definitely has to be out of the view of anybody that don't want to see it.
Any other comments from the board? There being none, what's your pleasure?
Resolution 21-18, removal of the walking walls. I'd like to make a motion that we remove walking walls.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we adopt resolution 21-18. All those in favor, roll call vote.
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Conwell.
No.
Mr. Kane. Ms. Bishop.
The next item on our agenda this evening is an appointment, the Rural Solar Development Coalition. Ms. Susan Seward and Mr. Robert Crockett are present, and they wish to share a PowerPoint presentation.
Good evening. My name is Robert Crockett with Advanced Strategies and also representative of the Rural Solar Development Coalition. So Susan Seward is with me tonight, and just a comment. We've done this presentation several times, but this is perhaps the grandest environment that we've done. So what we'd like to do today is share with you a little background on solar activity in Virginia. Talk about the legislation that rolled through the 2020 General Assembly, and then talk to you a little bit about the coalition and its objectives for the remainder of this year. Just a background. So as each of you are aware, there was a great deal of solar legislative activity, solar in the General Assembly, highlighted by the Clean Economy. With that, there was a lot of discussion. There was a lot of players at the table. One of the things that Susan and I realized during those deliberations during the General Assembly was the perspective of the rural counties of Virginia was not at the table like it should be. So we stepped in, a couple of counties who were members of the coalition today. I asked us to represent those individuals, those jurisdictions within the solar legislative discussions that we were having, and that's what again led to the development, creation of the Rural Solar Development Coalition. Just a comment on the content before I sort of go through the presentation tonight. So it requires 16,100 megawatts by 2045. Just in real terms, that's about 161,000 acres of solar in Virginia, 252 acres. So that's a lot of solar development, utility scale solar activity in Virginia. Quite frankly, we'll take you through. There's a lot of activity, a lot of development, really good development on behalf of the General Assembly that gave you opportunities for solar that you didn't have previously. So it's not a click, it's a roll. Sorry. So tonight we'll take you through the zoning provisions that were discussed. We'll talk about a little about the revenue sharing and the M&T bills that were part of it. This is in your packet. You can either go through it with us or go through it with the packet. And then we'll talk about House Bill 1675, which is the host agreement. So with that, I want to introduce you to Susan Stewart. Susan works with me in the Rural Solar. She's going to take us through some of the first.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us here this evening. So as Robert said, we had a tremendous amount of activity at the General Assembly this year. The first of our zoning bills would be House Bill 655 and Senate Bill 870. This allows the board authorizing the locality to include reasonable regs and provisions in its zoning ordinance for a special exception in the solar project. The bottom line, we call this the solar proffer bill. Its originations were with the proffer system for commercial development, but in effect, what this allows a locality to do in dealing with the solar applicant is have the dedication of real property of substantial value or a substantial cash payment for or construction of a substantial public improvement. The need for these improvements does not have to be generated solely by granting the CUP for the solar project, but there needs to be a reasonable nexus. What that translates to in plain English is if you're looking for a proffer condition, if you will, under House Bill 655, Senate Bill 870, you would look to things like broadband deployment, fire and emergency services. Those would be things that in solar development, they don't require necessarily roads and schools, those kind of infrastructure improvements. But there is that relationship for broadband and for fire and emergency services, fire trucks, EMS, et cetera. So that would be a path you would pursue under this legislative strategy. The next bill, I'm going the wrong way. Senate Bill 656. This is actually helpful. This is something localities are dealing with right now that are dealing with sort of an onslaught of solar applications. This is really to help your planners in talking about the equipment that's going to be in a solar facility. It authorizes a locality to include in its zoning ordinance provisions to incorporate generally accepted national standards for the use of solar panels and battery storage. So when you are trying to develop a project and you want to make sure the equipment, either panels or battery storage that's coming into your locality, you've now got a reference in the code that gives you different standardizations that you can reference in your zoning to make sure that equipment is industry recognized and safe. You all don't have to send your planner out to do the digging. We've now got 4 different certifying bodies that you can reference in your zoning that equipment must meet. So again, saves you a little bit of homework on your planning side. The next bill is 657. This is an interesting bill. As it was adopted by the General Assembly and signed by the governor, 657 says that a locality may waive what we call the 2232 review. The way the bill was introduced, it was a little bit combative to local government. The bill said that anything up to 150 megawatts, there would be no 2232 review. And that is critically important because, as you all know, in local government, there are some places a solar facility is going to work much better in your neighborhood or your county than others. And 657, as introduced, would have taken away your ability to require that review in your comp plan for compatibility with your comp plan and with your zoning. We were successful, the coalition, we were successful in getting that bill amended to make it permissible. If you choose to do that, you can. But at least it's not mandatory, because as introduced, I think it was a real shot across the bow at local government. So that was a success for us. Going up to the, and I've got to make sure I'm not rolling too fast. Okay. Next one. Now we're going to get, those were the zoning bills. Now we're going to briefly get into the revenue bills, because as we know from a local government point of view, solar is really largely about, you know, the money for us. What are we getting for turning over potentially thousands of acres to solar panels? One of the big game changers this year was House Bill 1131 and Senate Bill 762. This allows a locality by ordinance. Now, you must adopt an ordinance, go through the process, but by ordinance, you can assess a revenue share of up to $1,400 per megawatt on solar projects. This $1,400 a megawatt is for the life of the project. And there are a couple caveats with this. There are a couple that are not eligible. 20 megawatts or less projects that file the interconnect before December 31st of 2018, 5 megawatts or less. The very tiny projects, you can't avail yourself of this. The real big deal on revenue share, the pros. Guaranteed revenue, 1,400 a megawatt. 100 megawatt project, 100 times 1,400. There's your yearly revenue share. You take that out over 30 years, 25 years, the life of your project. If you go down this road, this is where the hard work comes in at the local government level. It becomes a math exercise. If you go down the revenue share road, you cannot charge them the M&T. It's one or the other. So, and it's not retroactive. You cannot claw back on projects that were permitted before July 1 of this year. So it doesn't have a retroactive aspect to it. However, you can ask. They don't have to enter into a revenue share. You're perfectly allowed to ask, but there's no mandatory clawback on an existing project. Where the math comes in is you really have to look at your M&T, and that becomes that weighing exercise. Typically, machinery and tools in that first 5 years is more lucrative than your revenue share. You take that over time when you take the depreciation, which is a whole other issue on M&T. You know, and that's the localities, depends on the size of the project and what your M&T rate is. But there's now this tool, and it's a good tool. And depending on the project, it may be the way you want to go. That was a big victory again for rural Virginia. That was a win to have this tool. So now we're going into the next bill, which is the other big revenue bill. That is the step down on the machinery and tools. As you all know up here, we've all dealt with these solar projects. One of the issues with solar is out of the gate, per the Code of Virginia, solar projects are 80% exempt from machinery and tools up to 150 megawatts. So we are losing revenue tremendously out of the gate. We were successful this year in getting a change to that 80% exemption. We actually achieved a step down, which changes your local property tax exemption from an 80% exemption for the life of the project to a step down scale of 80% in the first 5 years, 70% in the second 5 years, and 60% for all remaining years. That is where the math exercise comes in between M&T and revenue share. But again, it gives us one thing, it gives us a bit of a break on M&T, and again, we have options now. And we went into this General Assembly session, we didn't have many options at all, to be honest. So, these revenue tools and these zoning tools are certainly victories, and they give us more flexibility. So, that, it was successful. I think I've covered everything on the revenue share. So on the M&T, so that sort of covers zoning and the money side. I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Crockett, to Robert. He was instrumental in handling the host agreement bill, which is really our other big vehicle to deal with these solar applications. I'll turn it over to Robert.
Thank you, Susan. So as Susan was talking about, there was a lot of discussion really about ways to enable the county to procure more revenue out of the utility scale solar projects from 2020. In addition to the M&T bill and the revenue share, which was reviewed, the other significant piece of legislation was HB 1675, which we've heard as a host agreement. I think everybody that's in this room are familiar with host agreements done primarily for municipal landfills. It's a similar concept, and that's exactly where this legislation came. The idea of using that, that opportunity, negotiations, discussion with solar developers to create a revenue stream that is consistent, but also allows you the opportunity to do things in your county you might not ordinarily do. It really, I'm going to go through this quickly, but it really contains three key components. It requires the applicant to give you notification, the county, of their intent to locate a facility in an opportunity zone as defined by the IRS. It doesn't have to be an opportunity zone, but it has to meet the characteristics as defined by the IRS. The second thing, really has to, you've got the opportunity to do a lot of different things. So it requires the developer to meet with you. So not just come in, but actually has to meet with you and then negotiate terms of the 1675. I included a great deal of details of the legislation, but I'll just give you a sense of the way it was written during the discussion in the Senate committee. A representative from Northern Virginia who was familiar with local government spoke to the bill and says, the patron of the Delegate Keith Hodges, he said, I really appreciate everything you've done with this bill. It's a bill so broad you could drive a truck through. So there are a lot of opportunities built around 1675 that are not necessarily stipulated in the bill by language, but gives you the opportunity to possibly negotiate with solar developers. I'm going to, again, not go through this. It doesn't, one thing I will say, it doesn't apply to solar facilities receive zoning or site plan approval, preliminary or otherwise, before January 1st, 2020. However, Susan's been right. There's been a couple of developers that have been willing to go back and retroactively begin to have conversations with counties, even based on the way the legislation is written. So we think it's a good bill. It's a really good bill, and it enables the county to do things that might not ordinarily do otherwise. I'll speak very briefly to stormwater again. When we talk about utility scale projects in Virginia, you're talking about some 1,000 acres. There are proposals out there for some counties, 6, 8, 10,000 acre projects. So obviously that creates problems with respect to stormwater. We've been in close coordination with DEQ as we go through this in terms of sequencing, understanding third-party contracting and things like that. So again, that's one of the things that the coalition is trying to do for counties experiencing these kinds of proposals. I'll speak to the coalition real quickly. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody, so I'll speak to the counties. So the counties involved right now: Charlotte, Halifax, Appomattox, Prince George, King and Queen, Lunenburg, Richmond. We have 3 more presentations this month, in addition to the one we're doing. So 4 counties this month. And again, we are trying to provide value. So we listen to the counties who are experiencing the proposals, understand what their needs are. We're trying to help them provide information, research, code, communication. We work with DME, UVA, along with a bunch of other folks on an evaluation tool that will help counties decide whether the MT process or the revenue share is the appropriate way to go based on the size of the solar project. So we're also creating a white paper, 1675, that will provide the counties the opportunity to go through that white paper and look at the opportunities that we have that might not have thought of based on the discussions. So with that, I will step aside and see if there's any questions. Oh, I forgot Sussex. Sorry. So with that, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
I would like to ask you this. We're talking about clean energy, or what this, you're dealing with the fact that the deal concerns clean energy.
Yes, so I use the term Clean Economy Act, which is effective, but it's really alternative energy, solar and offshore.
Okay, so hard, because I noticed the emphasis is on solar, thermal energy, wind energy, of course, wind and thermal energy is a lot less than solar energy. So I was wondering why we emphasize solar and not the other two.
So the reason that the solar push, that the RSDC was formed is quite frankly for counties to look at solar, utility scale solar development, not other projects, but just utility scale solar as a way to enhance, the mechanisms they have in place to create revenue. That's all we did. We really focus on solar, not an all-purpose, all things to all people. We really focus on our ability to provide value to counties like yours, as they well experience, receptivity on the part of solar developers. So solar developers are looking at Southside, South Central, Middle Peninsula, Northern Neck as the place they're going to be hosting these large utility scale solar projects.
We have a lot of stuff, people that really the cheap way to provide electricity to our customers. It's the opposite. Okay, thank you.
I'm happy to answer any other questions. I will say we have found a coalition in Sussex. We were an early member, and we have, found that information sharing between localities that are dealing with these projects to be very helpful. One thing we are doing that we are dealing with in Sussex, and I'm sure it will come to you, is battery storage. And that is sort of the new Wild West of solar. Sometimes battery storage comes with projects. Sometimes, as we've seen in Sussex, there is standalone battery storage. We have done sort of as a service for our member localities since we were, I think, probably one of the first, if not the very first in Sussex to deal with freestanding battery storage. We've done a very detailed 7 pages of recommended conditions. So if someone presents you all with battery storage, we have spent a lot of time, on behalf of the coalition, really researching proper conditions regarding particularly fire and emergency services. With battery storage, you must get fire and EMS conditions right, and also the technology on battery storage. So that's something that was not in the legislation this year. That's another service to the coalition we're now involved with on that area of solar. So that's going to be the next thing down the pike. So that's one thing that we are offering to the membership that we've dealt with in our locality. But I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay, I just basically, from my understanding, basically what the coalition does is it just helps counties to increase the revenue that they can receive from these solar projects that are trying to come to their area.
Yes, ma'am.
As well as any legislation or laws that have been passed that, we may not know as a coalition. You all have already done the research to give us what our best options are for solar projects.
Yes, ma'am. We are trying to be sort of a one-stop shop clearinghouse. So poor Mr. Pope doesn't have to reinvent the wheel on every project. We've all kind of been through this in varying stages, in some localities more than others, but we're working very hard, Robert and I, with the members to develop, some really good recommended sets of conditions, citing policies, trying to take what we've all learned from our experiences and sort of build a library, if you will, so member localities can have the benefit of not reinventing the wheel every time, and also sort of give some guidance when you're going through revenue share versus M&T. Anything else, Robert, I'm missing that we're offering up?
So the one thing I would add, just to that, is the benefit, it's really the connectivity that you have with some of these other counties that are really going through. There's many counties out there that are on the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, on really very large utility scale projects. And you have the benefit, and the idea was that, and this came from the counties, quite frankly. We wanted to Richland County and the northern net wants to connect with somebody in the south side, and this is the opportunity to do that if they're going through the same stuff.
So basically, if we decided to take advantage of becoming a member of that coalition, what would that mean financially for you?
I believe in your packet, the coalition joining is $5,000.
Thank you so much. Conversations on this.
Sure. And any other questions, I think our contact information is in here, so feel free to contact either one of us. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Our next item this evening is Mr. Willie Gillis or Mr. Craig Scott, I'm not sure which is here tonight, representatives of the Confederate Monument. They have a request to utilize the Washington Park Community Center grounds.
Good evening. My name is Willie Hardin Gillis Jr. Again, my name is Willie Hardin Gillis Jr. My address is 2418 Red Road in Porter, Virginia. As the young lady just mentioned, I come before you in regards to the Cover 3 Foundation, ask for temporary use of the Washington Park building. Before I ask you and talk to you about Cover 3 Foundation, I'd like to give a little brief history, personal history of myself and the Washington Park building and that Washington Park field. I grew up in the Washington Park community. I went to Greensville County High School, graduated from Greensville County High School, played quarterback at Greensville County High School. After leaving Greensville County High School, I went on to play at Norfolk State University at quarterback, winning the CIAA championships in 1984. Prior to all that, that field at Washington Park was the reason that I was in that position. I learned to throw a football on that field in Washington Park. After leaving Norfolk State University, I played in the National Football League, being one of the first African-American quarterbacks in the National Football League from the Washington Park community and that Washington Park field where that building is today. That building, that field is near and dear to my heart and near and dear to the community members of Washington Park. We are asking for temporary use of the building to give away free meals that won't cost the county one dime. Free meals to local kids who are going through what right now, I'm a business owner in this county, and a lot of our kids are going through a lot of hunger issues because school is not open. We don't know when those meals will return that they are missing. We are asking for temporary use of the building to give away free meals to Greensville County residents. What is the Cover 3 Foundation? The Cover 3 Foundation is a foundation founded by a good friend of mine, another former National Football League player, Greg Scott, played for the Washington Redskins. He is from Cortland, Virginia, played at Southampton High School, went on to play at Hampton University, which I thought was a big mistake because I could recruit him and try to come to Norfolk State, he wouldn't come there. He went on to play for Hampton University and graduated and played in the National Football League. A tremendous young man. Greg is right now feeding over 800 kids a day in the state of Virginia, free of charge through the Public Free Foundation. I brought this program to Emporia when I started coaching at the high school 3 years ago. And because of the food program, our numbers went from probably 50 kids in the program to over 70 kids in the program because of those meals. Because of the meals and because the kids were in food deserts, and we were happily giving those meals away free to these kids. Public Free Foundation has provided over 3,500 meals to kids in the county in 3 years. The program has been a vast success. It's been so successful that we're trying to continue this program after school and on the weekends, but because of some other things going on in the county and school not being open, we can't get these meals to these kids. We have no venue to get the kids the meal. We want to make the venue at Washington Park an area where we can give away, again, free meals to the county residents. These will be prepared meals, be drive-through. No one will be enabled to get out of the car. Parents will drive through, pick up the meal, keep going. There won't be any socializing. The only way the kids will get the meal, the parent picks them up through the car. Public Free Foundation has put together norms and making sure these meals are delivered safe. We just need to make sure that we have a place that we can keep the meal cool because of the high temperatures we go through in the daytime, and make sure we can give these free meals to residents of Greensville County. Are there any questions?
I'm gonna say this. Before this garbage got started, we was feeding 240 kids on a Saturday morning. We had a minister to cook the meals. And I don't think people realize, how many kids go home in the afternoon from? How many kids you get home and may not have access? On Saturday, we gave away food, we gave away school bags. I'm with you 100%. Anything we can do to help these kids out, I'm all for it. This is home for them too. But you have my consent. I'm definitely love to be a part of it.
I'm also very familiar with Confederate Free Foundation, and they have done some great work, not just in Southside, in Greensville County, with feeding the kids that you have here, but also in Southampton and surrounding counties. They have really been doing a whole lot with a lot of kids throughout Virginia. So I think it will be a great asset to the county.
If there are not any more comments, I move to approve the Confederate Foundation service. Washington Park.
I'll second.
It's been moved to second that we approve the Washington Park Cover 3 project. All those in favor, the roll call vote.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye.
Mr. Conwell? Aye. Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Estrada?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda, citizens' comments. Anyone wishing to speak to the board should come forward, state your name. If there is no one, we will move on to other matters. We have an added item this evening, the school cost sharing agreement. Staff is requesting approval of resolution 21-20, which is really approval of the revised agreement. It's presented to you. It was handed out with the changes made after the school board reviewed the advice rate. Staff request your approval.
I move we approve resolution 21-20. Second.
It's been moved to second that we approve resolution 21-20 as presented. All those in favor of the roll call vote.
Mr. Burrell?
Aye.
Mr. Conwell? Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Estrada?
Aye.
We have one other added item, and it was a selection of an evaluation form.
And I believe the board intends to adjourn this meeting to 5:30 next Wednesday, the 12th, and take up this issue.
And In that case, we'll move on to the last item on our agenda this evening, and that is a COVID-19 update from Mr. Reggie Evans.
Madam Chairman, board members, tonight I want to give you a COVID-19 briefing update, and I also want to touch briefly on hurricane or tropical storm Isaiah, which is headed in our direction as we speak. According to the Greater Health District statistics as of today, August 3rd, Greensville County has 403 confirmed COVID cases reported, and Emporia has 166, bringing that total to 569. And each meeting I'm presenting numbers to you, and I can't stand here and tell you that we're headed in the right direction because we're continually going up. So I want to remind residents to please stay at home unless they need to leave, to go shopping or go to work or whatever, or practice their social distancing, try not to gather in large groups, and to wash their hands frequently, and wear a mask when in public, and if hand washing with warm soapy water is not available, to use hand sanitizer. These are things that we can do with simple processes that would help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And since our last meeting, staff conducted 4 personal protective equipment points of distribution. Beginning last Monday, on the 27th, we were here at Golden Leaf Commons, and we were also at the Jarrett Volunteer Fire Department Station. And then on Tuesday, we were at the Washington Park Community Center, and we were at the Skipper Voting Precinct, the last one down Skipper Road. And doing those, each board member was present at some point in time, some stayed the entire time. And also Miss Ann Brown from the Jarrett Town Council was at the Jarrett Volunteer Fire Department. And we gave out over 1,300 PPE kits, which included hand sanitizer, informational brochures, as well as masks that were washable. With the exception we ran out of our washable masks. Right at the very end, we had to use some disposable masks like I'm using now, or wearing now. All right, I consider that a successful event in those 2 days. We also they have planned on continuing with another distribution, which will be held from 6 to 7:30 p.m. to allow working people to come by. And staff is planning on having that at a date in the near future right here behind the Golden Leaf Commons, which is central and easy to get in, easy to get out location. All of this PPE that we gave out was made possible by the government's task force for health equity. And I want to say that Delegate Tyler's office was also instrumental in working with the governor's office in order to make that happen. So staff really appreciates all the support we had from the governor's office and the distribution that we have from staff members and board members to make this event a success. All right. Now, switching gears to the storm at hand, hurricane or tropical storm, whichever one it decides to move to, is headed in our direction, and based on the last predictions we had, we're looking to get anywhere from 3 to 6 inches of rain, and wind gusts could get up as high as 60 miles an hour. And when we have that, we can expect local flooding on some of our roadways. We can expect down power lines and power outages, down trees and impassable roads. All right, and depending on the severity of the storm, would means how passable people or how quickly they can get to work. So what staff is asking is that we allow the employees, if needed, to come in as late as 10 o'clock to give them time enough to assess damage at their own homes before they come to work. I talked to Ms. Ace about that earlier today. So that's what our plans are for the storm. And as always, with a hurricane or tropical storm, we'll react once the weather clears, to where it's safe for us to get out and do assessments and things. But fire, EMS, and those type calls, the sheriff's office, when the weather's bad, we try to hunker down, keep all of our employees and the community safe. We just ask that the community not be out riding around, in implement. So unless you have any other questions, that concludes my presentation.
I got a question, Mr. Norman.
Yes, sir.
Going back to the code, on the numbers you presented for the county, does that include Greensville Correctional Center?
Yes, sir. As of today, it's over 200 cases. And we also had a big influx in the city with long-term care facilities.
So if we took Greensville Correctional, our number would drop by 200 cases.
If our total cases for the county, if we took that Greensville Correctional, if we would drop by 200 cases, 200 plus cases. Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
At this time, I move that we adjourn to Wednesday, August the 12th at 5:30.
I move that we adjourned this meeting at 5:30 Wednesday, August 12th, 2020, from the conference building.
Second.
It's been moved and second that we adjourn to Wednesday, August 12th at 5:30. All in favor of the roll call vote?
Mr. Brown.
Aye.
Mr. Conrad. Mr. Kane. Ms. Aisha. I'd like to call the board and sewer back into regular session. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Brown. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Kane. Ms. Aisha. I'd like to get a motion resolution W-20-52 closed section.
So moved.
Roll call. Mr. Brown. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Kane. Ms. Aisha. Approval of the agenda. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Brown. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Kane. Ms. Aisha. Approval of the consent agenda.
We approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Mr. Brown. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Kane. Ms. Aisha. There's no public hearing, not an item with appointment, no old business, no new business. The next thing I see says adjourn. There's no motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Brown. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Kane. Ms. Aisha.